What's up guys, I'm Kyle at Fortune Off-Road. In this video we're building an engine skid plate for the YJ. God knows I need one. So I've had the YJ for about 3 years now, and I've crushed the oil pan in 3 times. I think the first one was at Hollister Hills. I was in the rock garden there, and I didn't even know I crushed it in, and I drove it around like that for a while, which could be a problem, especially with how the oil's gonna circulate in there. And you know, if there was a hole in it, that would have not been good, you know, running out of oil. The second time, I just kind of tapped it, but you know, I didn't remember what the pickup in there looked like, so I decided to just change it out. And the third time, most recently at Prairie City, I was testing out the new Atlas, and my front axle rolled over a rock, and it rolled the rock up right into my oil pan. And at that point I was like, dude, I have to do something right now. So I started the hunt for engine skid pan things, something like that. And there's a couple of companies that make them. Couple issues with them though. The first is that they usually design them to work in conjunction with the skid plate that is under the aft side of the transmission in the transfer case. So you have to buy their skid if you want the engine skid to work with that. The other problem is they're made out of plate. So they do cover a lot of area and they fit really well, but they're super heavy and they're actually pretty expensive, especially when you buy the pair. There's an additional option where you can get an aluminum set, but with that lightweight aluminum, you have the problem of the extra cost, and it also might not slide too well over rocks. So after looking at all these options, I decided to go a different route and do more of a DIY setup. Genright Off-Road makes the DIY engine skid. I'll throw a picture of it up here. I'm not even sure what it's called, but I really like Genright stuff. And one thing that this kit offers over the other ones is it's much lighter, takes up less room, and it's a combination of steel and aluminum. So it's a steel hoop that goes all the way around, and you can weld it up to meet your application. Then you bolt the aluminum skid up to the steel. So if you don't like that aluminum, you want to do something else, you could swap out for steel. You could do expanded metal. You could do the cutting board material. I always forget what that stuff's called. I just like the options you have there, but it is gonna require me to fit it all up, which is the biggest liability. I've got to cut it up, weld it up, and mount it up, and hopefully I don't screw it up. All right, let's get started on this thing. All right, first things first, got just the hoop right here. This is the main part of the structure. I've got it up on a couple of jack stands, and you can see how close that is to my exhaust. It's not touching, but it's really close. This side, I already bent it up a little bit using a floor jack and a piece of wood. Gonna have to do that again. So what I'm really trying to do here is find a way to modify this skid plate that I have already, the stock one, to work with this so I can use this in the future, because I don't think I'm gonna have this skid plate forever. You know, cutting it up in the front and all that's fine. When I took the spacer out of this thing's like super high now, so I don't want anything hanging too much lower. But the issue right now is mostly my exhaust. I'm trying to just keep this level with frame, you know, basically level with the Jeep. Get that protection for my oil pan and everything all the way up there. You can see got a few inches between the diff and this hoop. Pretty tight fit up here. So from the side it looks like that. Kind of looks like some upper links or something, and it's just a tad bit lower than my skid plate is right now, and that's fine. I'd rather be scraping over a skid plate than, you know, crushing my oil pan. I've done that too many times already. So I think what I'm going to do first, I'm going to get this tube and the cross brace that goes in there all welded up. Then I'm going to line up this aluminum plate that's going to go on the bottom and get all those tabs welded on. From there I can find out how to mount the tube end that's like 90 degrees off from the skid plate in a way that I can take it off. So, you know, oil changes or doing changing out the oil pan, anything like that, any reason why I might need to take it off, maybe exhaust, drive shaft, etc. All right, I think we're gonna have to get to some welding. All right, second fitment, got all the tabs welded on, and now I'm getting ready to cut my skid plate right here. I need to cut some out right here so that tube can go up, and then we'll bolt this to the bottom. And this part right here, literally the first part I welded up, I messed this up. I was supposed to keep track of where these tabs needed to be welded, and one needs to be welded like right here. So I totally screwed that up, and I'm not sure what I'm gonna do. I might just tap this instead and have the bolt go into this tube, but I wanted the tube a little bit further back because I figured when I hit rocks, it's gonna be more in this area, and I'm gonna have some braces that go up to the motor mounts up there. So that seemed like the best place to have that cross tube. It wasn't. That was like the worst place to put it. So gotta find a way around that. And I still need to bend this tube up a little bit more because the exhaust is touching and we don't want that thing rattling. And between my front drive shaft, the exhaust, and this cross member, it's pretty tight under there. But I'm hoping that's good because that means no rocks can sneak through and hit it. But just knowing how I like to drive, I'm gonna hit a rock right there. Saga continues. All right, so I've been trying to knock this out every day after work, just like an hour here and there. And we finally made some progress. So check this out from the front. So you can see we've got the straight bar on, the hoop, and then this angled one on that side. Is it close to the drive shaft? Yeah, it actually is. And it's pretty close to the front axle too. But I flexed it out after I just tacked it on. I didn't flex it out all the way, but it looked like it wasn't gonna happen. It's not gonna hit. So I welded it on. I'm going for it. So from the side, looks like that. That's how it attaches on the bottom right there. Just goes up through the skid plate. You saw me cut out these notches so the tube could come up there. Eventually, I'd like to get one of the skid plates from Genright that is made for this. And I think this actually goes on the inside of the skid plate. And they already have the holes drilled, and that way when you put that aluminum plate on, it just is nice and flush along the whole thing. So there's the clearance between the drive shaft and that hoop up there. And you know, we got a couple inches from on the inside of the axle there. So it's all really tight. You can see the exhaust is still touching. And I took a permanent marker and just marked everywhere that it's touching. And then eventually, I think I'm just gonna get like a piece of tube and then like a big C to put on the top of it and kind of just like bend a tube shape into the bottom and see if that helps clear. The drive shaft is also really close to the exhaust. I think that's gonna hit. You can already see some marks right here where it's been rubbing, and that's before it got moved, so might be a little bit more. My supports that go up to the motor mount right there, warning booger welds. This was a very hard position for me to weld in, and I wanted to weld as much as possible because anybody who's welded some steel before knows if you just tack it on and then try to take it off and weld it up, the tubes are gonna move. So this one actually bolted right back up again. Thank God it worked. And I'm pretty much at the last step right now where I'm gonna put that aluminum skid on here. One thing about the aluminum skid is they countersunk the holes on like the opposite side that I would have, because it has like some markings from whoever made the aluminum or whatever. And obviously not a big deal at all, but you know, I would rather it just be bare aluminum. But about to throw that on. And also tapped this tube in 2 spots, so you know, didn't totally ruin that part. And looks like my oil is just gonna barely miss this tube when I do my oil changes, so you know, sometimes it works out. Let's throw this thing on there and see how it looks. Oh, look at that. Just about to be sunset over there, and we're done. I tried to get a time lapse that last part, but oh my gosh, I could not get my fingers into that little nook to get the those nuts on top of the countersunk bolts. So ran out of battery trying to do that. It's super frustrating. So now I know I need to just weld some nuts on that aft part of the skid, but let's look at it before it gets too dark. Ka-chow! Looks pretty good, right? I think so. From the side, we lost a little bit of ground clearance for sure. Probably like maybe 1.5 to 2 inches in some spots. For me, that's a good trade-off because I'm tired of crushing my oil pan. You know, if I hit the bell housing in the transmission or something, I could really be in some trouble. So for now, I accept. The nuts that hold these 3 bolts on right here are super hard to get to. It's between this lip and here, so you have to get your finger in there. And you can see from the side right here that this is designed to be on top of the skid plate in there, which, you know, I could have done. I could have moved it up into there and just cut this whole thing out on the front. But like I mentioned earlier, I just want to wait until I have the full skid plate to do that. And, you know, it's a new lip to catch down there, and I'm sure I will. But in the meantime, we've got some beef to help keep us out of trouble. And, you know, I already started it up with the exhaust touching like this. I'm not getting any rattling or anything because it's probably just a little bit too much pressure, but I still got to fix that. And then I got to throw some paint on the bare metal up there on the upper mounts. But I think we're ready to go wheeling. There's a shot from the front there. You can see we've got a lot of distance between the oil pan and the pan inside the skid there. I think it looks cool. It's gonna see some action for sure. It's gonna hit some stuff. Well, that is it, guys. Hopefully that's enough info to help you figure out if you actually want to use a skid plate like this. I love all the stuff Genright makes. My previous video of the Jeep, I showed these corner armor on the back and this tire carrier. I think all the stuff they make is really cool, and when you have all the same set from them, your Jeep just looks really great. This is just one more thing. So I have the cage to work on. I'm gonna do a little bit more to the cage in the back, like some additional supports, tie it into the frame in several spots here, and then after that, I think that we're done with the Jeep for a while. It should be able to just roll like that. Then we're gonna work on the Samurai in the garage, and then next is the 1-ton axles for the Jeep. I've got a Sterling 10 1/4 just sitting in there, and a 4 Dana 60 Kingpin that's gonna go in here. Move these axles out a little bit more, allow me to run some 40s like the ones that are on the Samurai. Of course, that's gonna be a ton of work, so that's all to come later. Thanks for checking out this video, and I will see you guys in the next one.